So a short time ago, just, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, we had a family celebration, big celebration. Our youngest daughter got married, or she got married before. We had a family wedding at our home, but this was a celebration with extended family and friends, big event, music like that, dancing, food. And we were sitting at the table at this celebration, and our son was sitting next to me. And he's a young father of 2 girls, 2 precocious and beautiful girls. I might mention my granddaughters. So as we're sitting there on this occasion, he's flipping through his phone and looking at the news. And amidst all the festivities and the noise and everything going on, he turned to me and he said, "Mom, I have a question. How do we live? How do we live now?" And of course, he was voicing the question that many of us have had, really, with the height of tension in our world. He was saying, he said, I really don't know what to do. You know, should I just concentrate on having fun with the girls? And should I somehow hunker down with my family? How should I live? What should I do? And I thought, that is such a good question. And it's one I think we have been asking, and actually we should ask. It's an important question. How do I live? How do I live in this world that feels so unstable? I came across a poem by David White that made me think of my son and his question. The poem is called "Sometimes." Sometimes, if you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the ones in the old stories who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere, but in this place beginning to lead everywhere, requests to stop what you are doing right now, and to stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away. These are very important questions that we are asking today. How do we live? And I was thinking about Sri Yukteswar, the guru of Paramahansa Yogananda, and he wrote this little seminal book called The Holy Science. And this purpose of the Holy Science was to show the deep thread of harmony that we find in the religions from the East and the West, to show that there is only one reality, and that reality is love, and that we are to awaken to this divine love. And at the end of that book, the book concludes with some words from Shankara, great sage. And what he leaves with at the end of the book is, the world is always unsafe and unstable, like a drop of water on a lotus leaf, until one is anchored in the divine. World is always unsafe and unstable, like a drop of water on a lotus leaf, until one is anchored in the divine. Well, of course, all the seers say this, right? Jesus said, you need a foundation for your life. Cannot build your life on sand. The winds of worry and fear will blow it away. You have to build your home, your life, on a rock of consciousness, on a rock of awareness. And then I thought of Paramahansa Yogananda. When he came to this country, 1920, he came to bring this very practical message that he had learned, and his teacher said, go to the West and take this message. Very practical message. And his very practical message was, you can know God. It was a totally outrageous message, I want to say. Totally outrageous. Really, wasn't it? When you think about it, because we, especially here in the West, have held that, God is someplace else. We're here on our own, making a mess of it, right? And God is watching, and we can't figure out why God doesn't help. So Yogananda came to say, you have to wake up and know that God is your life, and that it's possible for you to know God. That was the radical thing. To heal that split, that somehow God was up in the sky and we were here alone. So the radical message he came to bring was, waking up is coming to that direct experience of the truth of your divine nature. Knowing yourself, you will know what God is, because God is not separate from you. God is everything. We say that. We say God is omnipresent, don't we? Our very definition of God is that the one reality that is omnipresent, that is everywhere present at all times. And then we say, where are you, God? So our spiritual path, our sadhana, our spiritual practice, is learning how to look. Learning how to look. How to find God in the midst of chaos, of change, of difficulty. I thought I would read a little bit to you from Yogananda. When he came, of course, he came here and he was sharing this truth. God is your life. You can wake up. You can know this stability in the midst of challenges. And the time that he was in was not any less challenging than the time that we're in now. He shepherded his flock through the Great Depression in this country, and through the Second World War, and through the launching of the atomic age with the atomic bomb. Yogananda was here then. He was teaching this then. I have to say, I don't feel I can talk about something else. Do you understand? I cannot rise above where our hearts are. We have to go there directly. But I want to say, don't be afraid, because we all have the strength there. If we'll just go there, we all have the strength there to find what we need, to know how to live in times like this. So you'll forgive me that I won't have a diversion today, but I will have this direct path because I trust God, and I trust God in you. So, this is what Paramahansaji had to say. He said, The grim, and you have to think of this being so many decades ago, the grim march of world political events. So it gives us some perspective, doesn't it? All right. The grim march of world political events points inexorably to the truth that without spiritual vision, the people perish. Science, if not religion, has awakened in humanity a dim sense of the insecurity and even insubstantiality of all material things. Where indeed may we go now, if not to the source and origin of spirit within us? The broad sympathies and discerning insight needed for healing of earthly woes cannot flow from a mere intellectual consideration of human diversities, but from knowledge of our deepest unity. Kinship with God, toward realization of the world's highest ideal, peace through our divine connection to all. May yoga, the science of personal communion with the divine, spread in time to all people in all lands. As soon as we learn in meditation to love God, we shall love all humanity as we love our own family. Those who have found God through their own self-realization, those who have actually experienced God, they alone can love humanity, not impersonally, but as their brothers and sisters, children of the same Father, Mother, God. So the path for us is really simple. And those of you who study yoga here know that we put forth this teaching you find in the Yoga Sutra that says there's really two principal things that we need to do. One, we need to meditate. And we need to meditate more and meditate more deeply so that we have that divine communion, we have that direct experience of God, and we can connect to the qualities of God that reside in the soul that are within us. We will not find peace outside until we find it inside. We will not find love outside until we find it inside. The search for it is fruitless. It's only temporary if you find it out there. But if you find it within you, you can find it at any time. So the first call is to get stronger in your ability to abide in that higher consciousness that is within you. To do it regularly and often, to commune with God in the silence of your soul until you are lifted above your worries, your fears. And if you sit long enough, they will dissipate. If we sit here long enough, rock and roll will stop. I promise. It's the same with meditation. You sit long enough, you go deep enough, you will be renewed in your spirit. And you will find then that you can be an agent of peace. And you will find by connecting with God within you that the divine ideas that you need, the divine insights that you need, what should I do? They will come to you because you have a hotline to the infinite. So you can know whatever it is that you need to know. Be willing to ask the question and then open yourself to letting God guide you. And you will be guided. From the mundane to the huge questions that we have. I have seen this over and over again. Whatever you want to know, ask. But don't then sit there and try to think it out. ask, and then be a vessel of receptivity. Perhaps, and usually, often, God will not tell you in that moment. But just get into the shower, and then the inspiration will come. Or go for a walk, or be doing the dishes. You're not thinking about it. The inspiration will come. So, the one strategy we have is to go deep within. And the second strategy we have is to not go too far out. Meaning, don't get overly involved. Give yourself some distance from taking in things like news. Stay informed, but don't allow your peace to be lost. So you have to find that way in which you can stay informed, you can be guided to do what you need to do, but you don't become lost and then become part of the problem. Right? If we watch these things and then we become so upset, we become part of the problem. So it's interesting that this not going too far out in yoga is also called this way of renunciation. So I want to clear up something that is so fantastic to know. Because we often think, coming to the path, that this renunciation is, okay, good, I'm going to renounce the world. It's a mess. You know, my own life is a mess. The world is certainly a mess. I renounce it. Let it be as it is. I will let it go. But I want to say that that is not it. The renunciation that yoga invites us to is to renounce the world as we have believed it to be. And instead, to become aware that the world is full of God. Renounce the world as you have held it before. Do you understand what I'm saying? Give up your old ideas about the world. And see God everywhere. Renounce the world from how you have seen it. Lift up your consciousness and begin to see the holy, the sanctified world. Begin to see the light of God in everyone and in everything. Now, you're going to say, are you kidding? This is really hard. Well, I'll say back to you, how hard is it to not see God? So just try it. Try to see God in all of it. You know, we are living in a time of global spiritual awakening. But the world is not there yet. So there's tension in this old consciousness. So we want to be on the growing edge of love, on the growing edge of God awareness. And we have a special responsibility for that. And of course, it feels so much better when we can stay there. So, a little practical note of how to do that. First, back to have a strong meditation practice so that you don't allow yourself to get too disturbed. You know, the heart will still contract when you get news of suffering. That's unavoidable. And we wouldn't want to be beyond that because we don't want to close down how we feel. But we want to have the skill to be able to open up our heart again, right? So we can be useful. So one of the things we do, we acknowledge that God is everywhere. Omnipresent. Didn't we start there? God is omnipresent. So how can we start dividing up the world? God is omnipresent. We start awakening that in ourselves, and let us contribute to awakening that everywhere. And so part of it is we look for glimmers of light. It's like when I go to my Guru's ashram in the summertime in the south, they have something that we don't have here, which is fireflies. Fireflies are a sure sign that God has a sense of humor and playfulness, right? They're the best. And so you kind of have to go out at dusk, and of course they're there, but then there's a certain time where these little flickers of light come on. And it's such a delight to see. So right now, we have to look for those fireflies, for those flickers of light. We have to tune into them, hold them up, and let them nourish that consciousness that we are living in this time of global awakening. So for me, this last week, one of those beautiful big fireflies was the Nobel Peace Prize that went to the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. Their acronym is ICAN. This is a little group of people. And they got a treaty written in the United Nations. 53 nations have backed it. And now it will go through the ratification process. And so, of course, none of the nations that have nuclear weapons are interested in the treaty. And it was really lovely to read the statements of the people on the committee, this little tiny ragtag group of people who were helping to move this along in our world. And they said, look, we had no thought that bringing up this treaty was going to abolish nuclear weapons. But our strategy is to change the hearts and minds and to begin to lift this up as a very real possibility. And this was the strategy that was used with banning landmines and chemical weapons. Same strategy, which was to sort of embarrass the nations who wanted to do that, and to create a global consciousness that said, no, this is not the way we live. And so for me, this flicker of light came that said, here's these absolutely outrageous people who are working behind the scenes to change our global consciousness. And they're not saying it's too hard. They're saying it's possible. They're saying, I can. How lovely is that? So when we anchor ourselves in the infinite, one of the things that we discover is this courage to be a light of truth in the world, to be the growing edge of love in our family. So we have to look for those lights, and of course, we want to offer those lights. Look for them and offer them. I'm going to close with a little story that I read a little statement by American poet Mary Oliver, and it's really stuck with me. And I think it's a little necessary medicine for us. And she said, "You must never stop being whimsical. You must never stop being whimsical." So, I don't know about you, but I have not seen enough whimsy around. So I think it's up to us to be gorillas of whimsy. And to think about, on every given day, how much joy have we given? We have to measure a little bit. How much worry did we give someone else? How much grief did we give someone else? How much fear did we foment? So let's say, how much joy did we give? So we had a whimsy project at our house. We had a little remodeling in our living room. We had a door in there that was a single door that had several glass panes in it, just a regular little door, going in and out living room to the side patio area. And I had this vision that we should have French doors that would be all along the wall so you could see right from the living room into the garden. I persevered in my vision for 10 years until my husband gave in. And then we got the French doors. But then we had this other door that used to be there, and my husband said, "We should keep this door." I said, "What for?" He said, "We may need it." So I am trying to follow the way of not accumulating things that we do not need. And I said the only way, this is what marriage is like. I said the only way we will keep this door is if we use it. He said, "Where will we put it?" I said, "In the garden." He said, "That's a great idea." And so we took the door and we installed it in the front yard in the middle of nowhere. So truly, there's the street, and we have a front yard, and then there's a little porch that goes, but right there, near the sidewalk, is this door. And you can open it, it's functional, you can open it and go through it, or you can walk around it. And it still has the little sticker on it that it used to have when it was connected to the house that says, "Be careful, this place is alarmed." So we have been having so much fun with this door to watch people come up to it, not exactly know how they want to deal with it. Some people go right through, some people look at it and go around. Mailman told me the first day he came through it, came up onto the porch, and then he said he had just a moment of thinking when he was going to walk out that he was hoping it wasn't locked. So I could say more about the door, but let us have it as a metaphor, shall we? Just open the door to the joy that is within you. Find a way to share that joy with others. Let God be God through you. Om Shanti.